Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Anton, and welcome to today's video for Honkai Star Rail. Today's video is going to be more focused on broad concepts generally, and less about min-maxing, number crunching kind of stuff. We're going to be working with Blade today. We're going to be talking about some teams for Blade. Blade recently came out, so a lot of people have actually just pulled for Blade, and they actually got Blade. Like, I'm sure some of you actually watching this video probably are in that camp. But now that you have Blade, you're like, well, how do I actually build him? Like, who goes well with him? I actually just don't know exactly how I want to build my team for Blade. So we're over here. We're at Pridwin. We're going to be using their team builder tool to help showcase some teams for this video. Now, before we even get into team building, we have a few things to talk about first. Since Blade scales with his max HP, for a lot of these teams, we're going to be having a healer. You could consider Bailu because of how she works with increasing max HP. I don't think that is the way to go. I do think for pretty much every Blade team, the best healer is going to be Luocha. Some of these teams will not have Luocha. We'll talk more about that when we get those teams. But yes, Bailu is definitely a consideration. Just works great with shielders and healers in general. We're also only going to be talking about the characters that are out, so we're not going to be really including Fu in these builds, Lynx in these builds, Luca, even further upcoming characters too, like Imbibitor as well. So none of those characters will be considered. They probably will also be good, especially Imbibitor or Lynx, depending on exactly what they do, will probably be really good for Blade. Speaking of shielders and sustainers, you can also consider March because of how Blade works. You gotta kind of be careful with shielders though, because you do want your Blade to take damage. So I kind of like March if you want to consider that over Japard because of how her kit works with the built-in taunt. It does only work about if the taunt target, the Blade in this case, has a certain amount of HP. I believe it is 50% or more. As for Blade himself, I personally believe a lot of people are building him wrong and are trying to build him like a hyper carry like Zila. I think he is serviceable as a hyper carry, but I don't think that's where he excels. I actually think he's better as a sub DPS character. I feel like the hyper carry playstyle is best for more hunt style characters, single target characters, Zila, Dan Heng. And yes, erudition characters like Jing Yuan are fine with that too, but I still think he is just best as a sub DPS, an additional damage dealer that you're going to be running over second support for whatever reason. So yes, we already mentioned it, but I think with the way his kit works, giving you some solid AoE, I think it is best to pair him with a single target DPS. So, Zila, Su Shang, maybe an erudition character as well, instead, like a Jing Yuan or even a Himiko. Also, quick honorable mention here to Clara. None of these teams are going to have Clara, but I think there is actually a potential Clara Blade team out there. Not at the moment, but maybe in the future with more characters and more characters who have certain kits out there. But cute bruiser style, counter style gameplay could be cute with Blade and Clara, self-damage kit. But currently the meta is kind of favoring these high amounts of damage, fast damage, DPS check style stuff because of just, how you need to clear content to get certain stars in a MOC and other such things. Anyway, as for our first team, we're going to start with a free-to-play-ish team. Not all of these characters will be free to play, but for our healer, since this is a free to play team, we're gonna start with Natasha here. Got her cleanse, got her AoE, pretty solid. You know Natasha by now. Alongside this, we will want to have our fire MC, wherever they are. I actually don't know. There we go. Trailblazer, free to play, and we all have them. And the Trailblazer, the fire Trailblazer, is pretty good. As for the fourth character, I feel like just a nice support character to help Blade just, put out more damage somehow. So you could, if you want to keep the free-to-play team, you could go Asta. Not a big fan of Asta in this team, though. If you've done some gacha pulls and you got her, I highly recommend her for this team. I think Pella. Kind of like Pella in this team too. Just her strip, being able to strip the buffs from enemies is pretty nice. Yes, this team doesn't really do that whole like main DPS plus sub DPS that I was mentioning, but if you wanted to do that, you could also replace the fire MC with, say, a Sushong, also a 4-star DPS, and then you'd be running Blade, Natasha, Sushong, Pella. Obviously, you might have to be a little careful with your skill points if you don't have E1 Sushong, but I kind of like that team as well, but I wanted to try and make this first team fairly free to play. Do be a little bit careful with Pella, though. If she does get any toughness breaks and the freezes come out, it will slow down your opponents. This is also true of Imaginary and Imprison. But slowing down your opponents, causing them to attack less and less, does mean it's a little bit harder for your blade to get hit. So be careful with that. Now let's go to team number 2. Okay, so let's go and start with team 2 now. Now, you might say, well, streamer, you said this is a bad idea. I do agree, but I know some people want to build Blade as a hyper carry. So I've got a couple of teams here for a hyper carry style Blade, where he's going to be pretty much this solo damage dealer, the main damage dealer, and the other characters are all just pretty much supporting him. First off, assuming no free to playness, like you just have all the characters, healer, Luocha. Like, no doubt about it, Luocha is the best healer for our Blade. The field is great with him. The passive, the emergency heal, whatever you want to call it, whenever character's HP drops down below a certain percent, is great with Blade. So just throw in Luocha. Honestly, I feel like this right here is already a good start to any kind of Blade team. Now next up, not really hard to like build a hyper carry team if you've built a hyper carry team for like a Seela. Bronya. Bronya just so good. Like, she's just arguably the best support. Like, yeah, you can argue Tingyun maybe, but meh. I mean, like, again, just assuming no problem with how many 5-stars you're playing, I just think Bronya is the best support. The one thing I will say here is double wind might be a little annoying, might be a little iffy here. So we can actually fix that. And I actually just think this character is really, really good anyway for pretty much for a lot of Blade teams. We can throw in Silverwolf. Silverwolf kind of helps us out on the damage front. While yes, you don't really build Silverwolf for damage unless you have her at a certain Eidolon level. Even at E0, Silverwolf puts out a solid amount of damage, and she helps buff up damage thanks to her ultimate. And thanks to her bugs and stuff, she can, she can decrease speed, attack, defense, etc., etc. Yes, it's RNG, but those kind of debuffs do help for your Blade to deal extra damage and the rest of your team to deal extra damage. So, big fan of this team here. Again, I do not recommend Blade as a traditional hyper carry style, but if you want to, I would say this is arguably the best build for hyper carry Blade. Now let's go to team 3. I actually have another hyper carry team for Blade that I also think is has some merit to it. So let's go. All right, so here we go for team 3. Now, we're going to start off with Blade and Luocha, because like I said with Team 2, I just think Blade Luocha is a very good start for any kind of Blade team. Now, I don't know if this is as good in terms of numbers as Team 2, but it definitely has some merit to it. And the reason I think that is both Blade and Luocha are not that skill point hungry. Luocha, a lot of his heals are not really using skill points. Yes, his actual skill does use skill points, but between the field and this emergency heal, it doesn't use skill points. And Blade himself, while using skill points, doesn't need to use them all the time, unlike, say, other damage dealers. So, what is a support that really wants to be using skill points and helps buff up your damage? Well, Yukong. With patch 1.2, we're all gonna have at least an Year 0 Yukong, if not more, like an E1, E2, E3, etc., depending on if you pulled Luocha and got some Yukongs. So, One of the weaknesses of Yukong, in my opinion, is that she is a little skill point hungry, but I do like her. She's really good at breaking. Imaginary damage is nice, but then the other problem is you're now running 2 imaginary units, which could be a little iffy. As for our 4th character here, pretty standard character here. You can probably guess what it's going to be for a this kind of hyper carry team. You might say, oh, is it Bronya? You could consider Bronya, but I actually think here we actually want to go for Ting Yun instead now. Just because, like, I think Ting Yun would be really good here. So yeah, just also the Fox Girl aesthetic's kind of nice. But yeah, you got Blade, Luocha, Yukong, Ting Yun. Like, Yukong also can speed people up thanks to Eidolons and stuff. Yukong and Ting Yun helping everyone deal damage, really, mostly just Blade to deal some more damage. Luocha keeps everyone alive. Big problem, though, is that imaginary element is a little iffy when it comes to the breaks. You really don't want to be imprisoning stuff too much. That means less things are attacking your Blade, and less things attacking Blade means he's not dealing as much damage because he needs to get hit. He wants to be taking some damage. But I do think there is some merit to this team. You could definitely try it out if this looks like a team you would like. So let's go to our next team. We got a couple more teams here, and next team is more of a for fun team, but I think some of you will like it. So let's go to it. Okay, welcome to Team 4 now. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This team is more of a for fun team. Maybe even actually a good team, but also kind of theory crafting here a little bit with this team. So in Blade's banner, the other 4 stars are what? Natasha, Sushong, and Arlen. So, you know how I was saying how I think it's best if there's a second damage dealer in these Blade teams? And I actually mentioned Sushong. What about Arlen? With a new relic set that is obviously meant for Blade, but also pretty good for Arlen, you can actually consider putting in Arlen, and Arlen's very skill point light as well, very skill point efficient, whatever you want to call it. So you're not going to be spending too many skill points here between all these 3 characters. So, you know, you've got Arlen doing his thing, trying his best. Blade's doing a little bit of AoE, a little bit of single target too. Luocha's keeping everyone alive. And then for our 4th character, honestly, you have a lot of choices here. Just a support, really. So I think, like, if you just can't really think of anything else, just throw in a Bronya. Bronya is always a safe pick, in my opinion, for a support character. If you don't have Bronya, but you still want to play this team, you can look at the first team we talked about, Pella. Pella is a very solid character, in my opinion, stripping away the buffs. The way she buffs, too, is also really, really good. Also, little iffy. I'm not a big fan of having double of the same element on a team, but you could consider Welt, Mr. Yang. I do think Welt actually would be solid here. We have a lot of skill points, so Welt can just be using all those skill points. Yes, you don't want to be getting imprisoned breaks too often, but I do think Welt will be pretty solid, but might not want to play him. But yeah, like, you can throw in a lot of different supports here. So, you know, Bronya, Pella, Welt, Asta, maybe, perhaps Ting Yun, Yukong, etc., etc. And let's go for our final team. In my opinion, the best of the Blade teams. So let's go. Okay, welcome to the final team. Team number 5. Again, what I think is the best Blade team. So we're going to start off with this combo again, the Blade Luocha combo. I don't think any of the other healers come close to how good Luocha is for Blade. Again, maybe Lynx in the future once we know more and more about what Lynx does, but for now, Luocha is best. After that, if we are going with this idea of having Blade being a sub DPS, let's add in a main DPS, a solid single target damage dealer. And in my opinion, Zila. I just think Zila is, like, by now we all know just how good Zila is at single target damage. She's just going crazy. Yes, her weakness is that she doesn't really do well against AoE unless she's actually, you know, killing stuff and, like, being able to bounce around and stuff. But Blade makes up for that weakness by his whole kit, basically. And for our 4th character, I think we want to support here. You might say, like, of course we want to support. You are very right, streamer. Who do we want as a support, though? Bronya? No, I don't think so. I think the best support for this specific team is Silverwolf. And hear me out. Silverwolf, unlike a lot of other supports, doesn't need to use her skill that often. Silverwolf can use her regular attack and still debuff the enemy. She can still, lower that attack, lower that defense, lower that speed, whatever. Meaning, and the reason why I think this is important, meaning Zilla can use all these skill points. Yes, the problem with this team, though, is you might be a little skill point hungry because of Zilla and, how she just keeps, attacking and attacking and attacking. But I think the combination of Luocha's skill point free heals, Silverwolf's, lack of needing to use her skill every turn, and Blade being Blade, means you should probably have, 3 to 4 skill points for big Zilla turns. When you, use her skill, you use her ult, use her skill, and just keep, you just keep on attacking, keep those attacks going. As for Blade teams overall, though, as our final Blade team, again, I think it is the best one, but there are so many other, variations you can do. For example, you could add, instead of Zilla, you could add, say, Yanqing. You could add in Su Shong, just a good single target damage dealer. You could even consider Dan Heng. Dan might be a little iffy because, wind, but you could consider him. Also, but yeah, I think that is a very good idea. You could also consider, instead of Silverwolf, you could consider all the other supports. You can consider Asta, you can consider Pella, etc., etc. Maybe you could throw Japard in this team too. I'm not a big fan of Japard, but I have heard some people are considering Japard. I don't think Japard's that great, but if you have Japard and you have Blade, you can consider adding in Japard. I will say this though about Blade. I do think his stocks are going to go up in the future when we get more characters. Basically, if we can get a character that can increase other characters' max HP, that would be good. Character kind of like March, who can basically taunt up another character, but without giving a shield. Maybe like for example, a character that could perhaps make a character get taunted and increase their max HP, but not give them a shield instead. Blade would love that character. That character would be insanely good for Blade. That character doesn't exist yet, but who knows what HoYo has planned for us in the future. Anyway, though, that's going to be it for today's video. That is 5 different teams for you to try out with Blade. And alongside those 5 other teams, I feel like I gave you some good advice too on just how to build Blade, my personal opinion of Blade himself. I think he is a very good character as long as you don't build him as a traditional hyper carry solo damage dealer. But I would love to hear what you guys have been doing with Blade. How have you been building Blade? What is your team you've been trying out? Have you been having success? Are you still struggling a bit? I would love to hear what you guys have been doing with Blade and any other ideas you have for any kind of Blade comps. And if you guys have any kind of video suggestions or anything you would like to see me cover on Honkai Star Rail, you can always leave a comment down below with any kind of request or suggestion or whatever, and I will definitely take it into account when I'm making more videos. And if you guys just enjoyed the video in general, I'd love it if you could leave a like or a comment down below. Always helps me out and always helps out the channel. And if you guys want to keep up with the Honkai Star Rail content, you can always go and subscribe to the channel as well. And if you want to watch me play some Honkai Star Rail, you can go and check me out over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Zeneton, where I stream pretty much every single day. Anyway, though, with that all said and done, thank you all once more for watching this video, and talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.